And when did you know you were going to be a showbiz mom?
Not until the Cosby Show, because this was not my, I put my son in the business for an extracurricular activity. I think it was really not until, like I said, the Cosby Show came along that I realized that that's when it became business.
We all thought the book had closed on this story long ago, that the truth had been sealed away in dusty court records and faded family albums. But what happens when the past refuses to stay buried? What happens when a voice from the shadows steps forward to confirm what so many whispers have hinted at for years? Pamela Warner, the mother who has carried the heaviest grief, has now said the words nobody ever expected to hear. She claims Malcolm-Jamal Warner, the beloved actor thought to have quietly disappeared from the Hollywood stage, is not gone at all. He's alive.
I had the information, I had the experience, had lived it, and I wanted to share with other parents. I wanted to give them what I didn't have when I came into the business.
Yes.
Just basic, and that's what this is. It's basic information.
And if that's true, then everything we thought we knew about him, his career, and the dark storm clouds surrounding Bill Cosby suddenly shifts into an entirely different light. Because if Malcolm is alive, then someone had something to hide. And if anyone has the most to lose, it's Bill Cosby himself. For decades, Malcolm-Jamal Warner was more than just a familiar face on television screens. He wasn't just Theo Huxtable, the wise, cracking son on The Cosby Show. He was a symbol of innocence in a time when millions of families tuned in to watch a version of Black America that felt safe, wholesome, and polished for prime time. But behind the glow of the sitcom lights, shadows gathered. Bill Cosby, the patriarch not just on screen but behind the scenes, was already carrying secrets that would one day explode into the biggest scandal Hollywood had ever seen. And in that storm, many careers were shattered, reputations questioned, and alliances tested.
So I got my own personal feelings about that because it personally affects me. But even outside of that, you know, just look at just how the media is playing this whole thing out. So it's just interesting how it's very unbalanced. I mean, they were trying to take Mr. Cosby's star off the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and I am in no position to defend him because I can't.
Malcolm's sudden fading from the spotlight always raised quiet questions. Was it by choice, or was he forced out, silenced by powers bigger than him? Now Pamela Warner's words strike like lightning through years of silence. She says her son is alive, that the narrative Hollywood fed the public isn't the whole truth. And if that's real, then we're not just talking about a comeback, we're talking about an industry. Shaking revelation that could drag Bill Cosby back into the spotlight for reasons far darker than his televised trial and conviction. Imagine the pressure, the fear, for Cosby, who has already watched his empire crumble under the weight of allegations and lawsuits. The possibility of Malcolm returning alive is more than just uncomfortable. It's dangerous because Malcolm didn't just vanish. He may have known things, seen things, or carried stories about Cosby, and that shows behind the scenes reality that the world has never heard. And if those stories come out now, they could rip apart what little remains of Cosby's carefully constructed image. Insiders whisper that the relationship between Cosby and his young co-stars was never as warm off camera as it looked on television. There were power dynamics, intimidation, and an unspoken code of silence that kept everyone in line. To the world, Cosby was America's dad. But to those who worked closest with him, especially the young cast, he was something else entirely. Untouchable, unquestionable, and deeply feared. Malcolm was talented, ambitious, and beloved by fans, but he was also close enough to see cracks in the foundation. What if those cracks grew into a truth so explosive that silencing him became necessary? What if his disappearance wasn't an accident of Hollywood fading memory, but a deliberate act to protect the man at the center of it all? Pamela's claim adds gasoline to those questions. If Malcolm is alive, then where has he been? Why has he been silent? And why now, after years of nothing but rumors, Would his own mother step forward with a confirmation? Some say it's grief morphing into hope, that perhaps Pamela simply cannot accept the narrative that was handed to her. Others argue that she has known all along, but fear of retaliation kept her quiet. But then there's the most chilling possibility that Malcolm's survival was always a secret meant to be hidden, and Pamela's breaking point has finally come. And if that's true, then Bill Cosby's reaction, his alleged panic, his reported outrage isn't surprising at all. It's survival, because if Malcolm comes back, so does the truth. We've seen this pattern before in Hollywood's darkest corners. Stars who vanish from the limelight, only for their stories to resurface decades later, exposing networks of abuse and manipulation that once seemed untouchable. The difference here is that this isn't some forgotten name or fading background player. This is Malcolm-Jamal Warner, whose very presence is tied to Cosby's empire. His return, alive and with a voice, could mean Cosby's last remaining defenses collapse completely. The stakes are enormous. For Cosby, already viewed as one of entertainment's fallen giants, Malcolm's survival could rewrite not just the history of The Cosby Show, but the narrative of his entire career. Think about the timing. Cosby's legal troubles may have quieted in the headlines, but the whispers haven't stopped. The lawsuits, the accusations, the endless debates over his legacy, they still hover. Now, imagine Malcolm stepping back into the spotlight at this exact moment, carrying a story the world has been denied. Hollywood loves a comeback, but this wouldn't be the triumphant return of a long-lost star. This would be the opening of a vault that Cosby and his defenders desperately want to keep locked. The fear in Cosby's camp makes sense. They know that if Malcolm speaks, the industry will listen. And if he's been silent for survival until now, then breaking that silence would shake everything. Pamela Warner's confirmation feels like the first crack in a dam about to burst. It raises more questions than it answers, but that's exactly why the world is paying attention. Did Malcolm fake his disappearance to escape Cosby's shadow? Was he hidden, protected, or even forced into exile by forces bigger than himself? And if he's alive, what proof will surface next? Photos, audio, or will Malcolm himself step forward, voice shaking but defiant, to tell his side? Until then, all we know is this: Cosby is rattled, Pamela is speaking out, and a story we thought ended years ago might just be beginning again. Because if Malcolm-Jamal Warner truly is alive, then the silence of decades has to be explained. Where was he? Who kept him hidden? And why now is the secret unraveling in a way that has Bill Cosby scrambling to keep control of a story that refuses to stay buried? The answers don't come cleanly, but the fragments are already surfacing, whispered in industry circles, passed through old friends and insiders who swear there's more to this saga than meets the eye. They say Malcolm disappeared not because his career fizzled, not because Hollywood forgot about him, but because he was caught in a web of power, manipulation, and secrets too dangerous to confront head-on. If he stayed visible, he would have been destroyed. If he stayed hidden, he might just survive. And that survival is exactly what Pamela Warner has now confirmed. For years, Malcolm's absence carried a strange weight. Fans remembered him fondly, yet his name seemed to fade from every major project, every award show, every late-night reunion that recycled familiar sitcom nostalgia. It was almost as if someone had scrubbed him from the record. Behind the curtain, whispers grew louder. Some claimed he had fallen out with Cosby himself, their on-screen father. Son bond shattered by tension and mistrust when the cameras stopped rolling. Others spoke of Malcolm being privy to details about Cosby's behavior long before the world knew the truth. Details that could have destroyed everything if they ever surfaced. And if that's the case, then Malcolm wasn't just another actor caught in the collapse of a sitcom empire. He was a threat. A witness, someone who knew too much. The stories suggest that when Cosby's fortress began to crack, Malcolm was faced with a choice: stand in the open and risk being silenced, or step back into the shadows, perhaps with help from those who believed his safety mattered more than the spotlight. Pamela's statement hints at this second path. She doesn't just say her son is alive. The way she speaks, there's a weight to her words, as though she has been holding onto this truth for longer than anyone realizes, watching from the sidelines as Holly would spun one narrative while she clung to another. And now that she has said it out loud, the question becomes, who else knew? Who else helped keep Malcolm alive while the world was led to believe his story was over? Industry insiders point to the chaos of Cosby's downfall as the perfect cover. When the scandal broke wide open, when victim after victim stepped forward, when lawyers and journalists dug into every hidden corner of Cosby's empire, the focus was on the women, the victims, the lawsuits. The trial, almost nobody asked about the collateral damage among the cast, the silence of those who might have had stories to tell of their own. Malcolm's absence became just another footnote in a storm of headlines. And that might have been exactly what was intended. By the time the dust settled, his vanishing act looked less like a mystery and more like a natural doubt from fame, but now we're told that wasn't the case at all. It was a disappearance, deliberate and calculated, orchestrated to keep him away from the machine that could chew him up and spit him out. And for Cosby, that disappearance may have been both a blessing and a curse, because as long as Malcolm stayed quiet, Cosby's empire remained a little safer. But now, with Malcolm rumored alive, that silence could turn into the loudest testimony imaginable. Think about what it means if Malcolm reemerges. He isn't just another former star trying to reclaim a career. He is a living archive of everything that happened behind closed doors during one of the most powerful eras in television history. He saw Cosby at the height of his influence, when no accusation could stick, when no journalist could break through the wall of respectability and money that shielded him. He saw how Cosby controlled his cast, his crew, and his image with an iron grip. If Malcolm speaks, it's not just another voice, it's the voice of someone who was inside the house, the so-called son of America's dad, peeling back the curtain on the truth that has haunted Hollywood for decades. That's why Cosby is reportedly shaken, because what Pamela Warner has confirmed is not just her son's survival. It's the survival of evidence, of memory, of testimony that could finish what the courts and headlines only began. The timing is no accident. Those close to the case believe Malcolm's survival is being revealed now because the ground under Cosby's feet is already unstable. His reputation is permanently tarnished, his legal troubles far from over, and his influence evaporated. This is the moment when secrets can finally come to light, when the balance of power no longer favors silence. Pamela's revelation feels like the opening salvo in a larger storm. And if Malcolm himself steps forward, it won't just shake Cosby's legacy. It will force Hollywood itself to reckon with its complicity. Because let's be honest, Cosby didn't build his empire alone. Networks, producers, advertisers, they all cashed in. They all looked the other way, and if Malcolm reveals what he knows, then this isn't just one man's downfall. It's an indictment of an entire system. Cosby's fear is understandable. He's survived scandal by leaning on denial, on legal maneuvers, on the hope that time dulls the public's outrage. But what happens when the past doesn't fade, when it returns with a face everyone recognizes? A face thought lost but suddenly alive, ready to speak. That is what Pamela Warner has unleashed. The ripple effect has already begun, fans buzzing online, conspiracy theorists connecting dots, journalists preparing deep dives into Malcolm's past. Cosby knows the headlines are coming, and he knows this time he may not be able to hide. The shockwaves from Pamela Warner's revelation are no longer confined to whispers and speculation. They are shaking the very foundation of Hollywood. By now, the idea that Malcolm-Jamal Warner is alive isn't just a rumor floating in dark corners of the internet. It's a spark that has ignited conversations in boardrooms, studios, and courtrooms. The possibility alone is enough to send executives scrambling to protect their brands, journalists racing to piece together timelines, and most importantly, Bill Cosby spiraling into panic. Because if Malcolm steps forward, he becomes the one person who can stitch together every fragment of this puzzle into a story that is impossible to deny. A story that could rewrite history and permanently destroy whatever remains of Cosby's legacy. What does it look like when a figure long thought absent suddenly reappears? For fans, it's hope. For skeptics, it's proof of what they suspected all along. That something about Malcolm's disappearance never made sense. For Cosby, it's a nightmare. Those close to the disgraced comedian suggest that he's been rattled in private conversations, asking how such a revelation could have leaked and what it might mean for the carefully controlled narrative he has tried to maintain. Because for decades, Cosby thrived on control. He controlled the scripts, the sets, the cast. He controlled how America saw him, presenting the image of a perfect family man while hiding a darker reality that eventually surfaced through dozens of allegations. If Malcolm returns, that control evaporates instantly. And worse, Malcolm has nothing left to lose. He doesn't owe Hollywood his silence anymore. He doesn't owe Cosby his loyalty. He doesn't owe the public anything except the truth. Pamela's role in this cannot be overstated. A mother's voice carries a weight that is impossible to dismiss, especially when it shatters years of silence. The way she framed her confirmation wasn't sensational. It was deliberate, almost protective, as though she knew that speaking out would put her and her son in the spotlight once again, for better or worse. And that courage has cracked open a door that cannot be shut. The world now demands answers. Where is Malcolm? Why has he stayed hidden all this time? And most importantly, what does he know? These questions hang in the air like thunderclouds, and every attempt to ignore them only makes the storm louder. Cosby's defenders are scrambling, trying to frame this revelation as another conspiracy designed to tarnish his name further. But even they cannot hide from the reality that Malcolm's potential testimony carries far more weight than another accuser, another lawsuit, or another headline. He is part of the family America once invited into their homes week after week, part of the image Cosby built his empire upon. If that image turns against him, if the son exposes the father, then the illusion is shattered in a way that no legal team or PR spin can repair. And for Cosby, that is the ultimate fear, not just being remembered as a predator, but being exposed by someone from inside the very circle he once controlled. The industry, too, feels the tremors. Hollywood is built on reinvention, on burying the past under new projects and brighter stars. But some ghosts refuse to stay buried. Malcolm's survival threatens to drag the entire machine back into the past, forcing uncomfortable conversations about how much people knew, how much they ignored, and how many careers were sacrificed to protect one man's image. If Malcolm speaks, he will not only implicate Cosby but also the gatekeepers who enabled him, the networks that cashed in on his success, and the culture that turned a blind eye to warning signs. In that sense, Malcolm becomes more than a survivor. He becomes a reckoning. What happens next depends on Malcolm himself. Pamela has set the stage, but the world is waiting for Malcolm to step into the spotlight. Will he issue a statement? Will he appear in public? Will he sit down for an interview that leaves no room for denial? Every possibility is being weighed, and every potential outcome is a threat to Cosby's fragile defense. If Malcolm stays silent, the rumors will only grow louder. If he speaks, the truth will explode like a bomb, scattering decades of lies and cover-ups into the open. Either way, Cosby cannot escape the shadow of the boy he once called son. The irony is almost cinematic. A man who built his career on being America's dad now finds himself haunted by the son who refuses to disappear. A mother's confirmation has undone decades of silence, and the truth waits just behind the curtain. The world is watching, the press is circling, and fans are bracing for the revelation that could shake an entire generation's memories of television's golden age. The longer Cosby resists, the more obvious his fear becomes. The louder Pamela's words echo, the harder it is to pretend that Malcolm's story ended long ago. Something is coming, something inevitable, and everyone knows it. So here we are, standing on the edge of a revelation that could change everything. Malcolm-Jamal Warner alive, Pamela Warner unafraid to confirm it, Bill Cosby terrified of what that truth could unleash. The pieces are on the board, and the game is reaching its final act. Whether Malcolm steps into the light tomorrow, next week, or months from now, one thing is certain: his voice will be heard. And when it is, it will not just shake Bill Cosby, it will shake Hollywood, it will shake history, and it will remind us all that no secret, no matter how carefully buried, stays hidden forever.